Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is this whole idea of mummification, and that is what you're going to take notes on and do a little assignment on it so you understand it. Because there's so much here to see that I like to kind of narrow in on this idea of afterlife. So what makes this museum, like I said, so unique is that these are actual, real pieces that were excavated out of Egypt in the 1920s and brought here as research. So what is mummification? This is a great example. What happens is linen is taken. So does everyone see the wrap that's used here? Okay, the wrap was used and it was put into a specific solution. Okay, the solution would have a lot of salts in it and other things that would help preserve the body. And that's what, when we're going to go to the chemist lab today, you'll see how they're still scraping and looking closer at what these solutions were and how these solutions preserve the body so well. Okay, so then they would wrap the body, and here you can see through the cloth, okay, into parts of the body. But most of it is so preserved. Look at this, it's incredible. So you're going to see a body that has no cloths on it, that was just left in the sand, so you're going to see the difference. So in mummification, they wrap the body in these linens that would have been soaked. Then the next thing is this beautiful covering that happens, okay, that's put on the top. This covering was created from papyrus. And papyrus, as we know from looking at the Nile River, and I showed you where all the green and where all the vegetation would be, they used papyrus and pressed it and made it into sheets that they could draw on, make scrolls out of. And they used it also in the mummification process to put on top of where they used the linen wraps. And then this became a nice, beautiful, smooth surface that then on top of that, they took and made a paste, like plaster, that could settle on top of that and make it nice and soft, and also, well, hard, then it became hard, but it made it nice and even to be able to do these beautiful paintings on. So does everyone see all the painting and all the detail that goes on here? And then there's gold leaf that would be laid into here. Sheets of gold then would be pressed into it. So all of this that we see in the design, I look at it as an artistic point of view, I'm looking at the shapes, I'm looking at the repetition of the design, I'm looking at the colors, I'm looking at, well, how did they get these colors? And they get these colors from what's around them in nature. The lapis stone, they carve it down to get that beautiful blue. The terracotta is also from the soil, like we saw terracotta clay, same thing, and they mix it. So these are specific colors to this region, to their culture of what they're using. Then we know about the symbols, and on the next case we go around, I'll point out the symbols, and it has descriptions about what all of these symbols represent, such as the beetle, the scarab, where the cartouche is, what I was talking about before, the name of the person that would be, that this is of. So all of this is put into a design that we read through it so that we can get an understanding of this person, who they were, what their role was, and so much more by understanding and reading this. So there's no words, it's all through images. Okay, and like I said, the emojis that we use, I kind of use that now. I just put out these little pictures to get my message instead of writing a whole thing. So I love it because I think it goes back to this whole thing. Okay, any questions anybody has? Okay, all right, thank you. And now we will go around to showing you, okay, a mummified infant that was over here. Because children would also be the same thing, okay? It wouldn't be as extravagant with all of the, papyrus on the top and everything. It would just be with the linen. But here you can see the skull is intact, the skin is intact, okay? This is how preserved these bodies are. And so this sarcophagus is different. Does everybody see how this is different? This is made out of wood. Okay, the ones we saw out there were made out of limestone. or they were made out of other stones from the area. And the one thing that's really unique here that we can see is inside of this sarcophagus, the painting that goes on. So as an artistic point of view, look at the way that the portrait is done, okay? It's very simplified, okay? You know, with the way that they are interpreting the figure. Figure's very static, okay? And then on the top of the sarcophagus lid, again, we see images, we see pictures, we see these hieroglyphics, bless you, that were painted on. Okay, thank you. Any questions about that? Okay, now we're gonna go over to the really decorative sarcophagus with all of the symbols and emblems, and this is incredible. And this is what I want to talk about before we go to this. This is the next artistic technique that I want to talk about, because if most people that come here, like I said, you know, they're looking at history, they're looking at archaeology and all these other things, but we're looking at is also from an artistic point of view about how are they created, the technique used. So this is when we looked at Rodin, and I said that his first piece, everyone thought that that was a body cast. And what is a body cast? This is a perfect example of a body cast of the face. Has anyone ever created a plaster mold of themselves with plaster wrap? When I used to teach kids, I'd have them all, we'd wrap their faces, just the front of your face, and they would put Vaseline on, straws in their nose, and we would take the linen wraps that had plaster on them and go across their face. And then it would dry rapidly and they pull it off. And then they'd have a mask of exactly what they look like. That's exactly what is done here, okay? From when they died, the plaster wrap would be directly put onto their face, okay? So we see an exact replica of what she looked like. Notice the features, okay? The delicate chin, the small features. Most Egyptian people, and you're going to see it in a small maquette architecture building I'm going to show you. You can see the doorways. They were very low. So that tells us, and when looking at the mummies, we can see the scale of how the height of the people were, okay? So you can see how delicate these features are. So anyway, after this is all created, then the artist comes in, and it might be a different artist now that did not do the mask, but another artist whose job is then to create the decorative elements and do the incising into this piece to draw those lines into the surface like you saw out there with the hieroglyphics. So that would be done, but before that, this is all gold leaf, okay? And what is gold leaf? Gold leaf is real gold. It's very delicate in sheets. And it's a technique that I learned. I did a lot of iconography of doing icons in from the Byzantine era study. And I would have to take gold leaf and press it. And it's really delicate material. Static actually picks it up with a brush, and you have to lay it down because it's very expensive. And then there's tools, burnishing tools that you use to press it, okay? Then after it's on there, then very delicately you can put these lines into it and you can paint on top of it. So that's how that was created, okay? And I know a lot of people wouldn't know that, you know, so that's why I bring to this the whole artistic part. And now, from understanding that, you can understand as you go to this piece, okay, and what I just talked about is how this was created with all those designs, how this was painted on, how intricate this is. And see her face? That face would have had gold leaf. You can see some of it, but many times, you know, through deterioration, and sometimes these tombs were robbed before the archaeologists were there. They would be robbed, and what was one of the first things they take, of course, is the precious stones and the gold. They just scrape it off and take it. And I'm going to show you amulets in this next case, which are wrapped in the linens, and they're like symbols. I think of it today as like medals that we have. I mean, I'm Catholic, you know, and I have these medals, and I have saints and everything, you know, it's just part of my belief. And you know, I have them in my bag or my pocket and all. And actually, in my family, when my father was buried. We made sure he had his St. Christopher medal on. Just kind of the same thing. I mean, we're not so detached, you know, in the world. We are connected with different things we believe. So they would be stolen, okay? Grave robbers knew this, and they would come in and they would, you know, just disrespect the bodies and just take all this, the gold and the, you know, precious stones and so forth. But anyway, I love this. I love this because this helps you understand the important symbols that are in the, that were painted on this coffin. And then you can see the name, okay, of the goddess, and then you can see here how things are depicted, okay? And then again, like the Ankhs was the one I was showing you in the sculpture, the symbol of eternal life. So when you see that symbol there, you know. So the more you study Egyptian art, Egyptian history, you begin to understand and how to read these things. And I just find it so fascinating. And I know with teaching children, I used to teach children a lot, and this is one of the things they were so fascinated with always, was the Egyptian art and you know, recreating these things. So I think it's exciting. Okay, any questions that we have? Okay, all right, thank you.